Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Gracias, ¿me escuchan bien?
The first thing is, I know you've had a very long day today, and you had a very long day yesterday. And also, I've been told that the people of Chile are the best dancers in the whole of South America. Is that true? I think that might be true. What I need you to all do is just stand up for a few seconds. Everyone could just stand up. It's a Saturday night, okay? And then if I was at home in Australia right now, I'd be having a beer and I'd be dancing. And so for 10 seconds, just to get the energy back in the room, I just need you to do your best dance. It could be like a romantic dance or like a wedding dance, any kind of dance. So 10 seconds, not 30 seconds. 10 seconds with the person next to you, dance, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Dance, come on. Oh, yeah, very good. That's it. Wow, that is, wow, there's one at the back there going wild. Thank you, you can sit down now. I just want to find where the hecklers are. This guy's had the beer already. He's been, Pisco Sours, yeah? Pisco Sours. I've got a few stories to tell you today. I am the token non-technical person from Atlassian. I'm not going to talk to you a huge amount about technology or products. I'm going to talk to you about humans being human, how we as humans can be better people at the way we work and help our companies grow. The reason I'm going to do that is I'm a firm believer that for us to unleash our potential in how we work, we need to do that with other people. And I'm not sure we're very good at that. So I'm going to share some stories with you today. The first thing I want to share with you is the style of stories I'm going to tell you. At Atlassian, we have these 5 values. We hire for these values. We live these values every single day in the way we work. Values like open company, no bullshit. This idea that we are a very open company, we share information. We often share things that in other organizations you would keep a secret. And we share them because we genuinely trust our employees. I heard some statistics before around the number of people in jobs who are not engaged. They do not feel like they're part of their organization. One of the things we do to combat that is we share a lot of information, good and bad. It's not just the positive things we share. We share a lot of things. The other one that I want to talk about here is play as a team. I've been with Atlassian for 4.5 years. When I joined Atlassian, we were quite a small organization, maybe 500 people, 2 locations, 35,000 customers. And when I first started working there, I was genuinely confused why they had hired me, because nothing was broken. Everything seemed to work. And what I realized was they'd hired me because we were growing so quickly. So 4.5 years later, we're no longer 500 people, we're 2,500 people. And we're no longer 30-odd thousand customers, we now have 107,000 customers around the world. Many of the organizations that you work with, so thank you for your custom. But we're also now not 2 locations, but 11 locations. So the complexity of our environment has changed. And what I want to talk to you about is, in my last week here in Chile, I've had a lot of people talk about transformation, business transformation, digital transformation, and God forbid, cultural transformation. And what I want to talk to you about is, how do we go about doing that? How can I share our experiences if we've scaled Atlassian so that you can be the best version of yourself in your work and in your teams? So the first thing I'm going to share with you is this idea of what does dysfunction mean? There are so many definitions of highly effective teams, lots of scientific research, and it's all wonderful. But it's kind of all a bit shit because it's based on theory, and I want to give you something practical. So here's a practical example. Dysfunction. It is the gap between what you know and what you do. So I'm going to give you a non-technical example. Christmas last year, a friend of mine gave me some book vouchers. So I went to a bookstore and I bought a book on fitness. It tells me that I should eat lots of vegetables, I shouldn't drink coffee, I should drink lots of water, I should exercise. It taught me about sleep and nutrition. I have read that book several times. I am fatter than I am fitter. It's sad but true. And that's because as humans, what we do is we have this desire to acquire knowledge. We want to know more. But we also realize that if we don't do something with that knowledge, we're dysfunctional. Many of the teams and companies that I work with know what it's like to be engaged. They know what it's like to be an awesome organization. They've read all the same books that we've read. But what they can't do is turn that into action. One of the things we did at Atlassian was to say, forget all the theory and forget all the rhetoric, forget all the science. How do we just do this in reality? How do we actually drive a culture and great teamwork when actually you have many different styles and many different people? So I want to talk to you about the 4 challenges that I saw when I started on this journey. The first one was the idea that our customers expect more and more every single day. So if you could just raise your hand if you're an Atlassian customer. Now keep your hand up if you expect our products to be better next year than they were this year. Okay, some of you actually just put your hand up for that. So the idea here is that if you think about any industry, not just software, any industry, your customers expect more and more every day, every week, and every year. They also expect more without necessarily wanting to pay more. They actually probably think they want to pay less. So they want the price to go down and the service to go up. And so how do you delight your customers? And if you think about it, with the Internet of Things and the advance of technology, customers have got more information than they've ever had before. A friend of mine in Sydney runs a restaurant, and he explained to me that people used to walk down the street and they'd smell the food and they'd see the ambience of the restaurant, they'd see some people eating, they'd walk in and they'd spend thousands of pesos. And he said now he stands at his restaurant and people walk past and they get their phone out and they start looking for reviews. They start looking for feedback from other customers. How many stars has it got? What's the rating like? So as humans, we've stopped using our intuition and we've started using our phones. We've started using content and information rather than trusting our own judgment. So customers expect more and more. Then there's technology. I personally think that we have over-focused on the changes in technology. I think most IT people I speak to are so happy talking about technology that maybe they do that instead of talking about the other things. Technology is definitely changing. You will see advances in artificial intelligence, automation, robotics. We have seen mass changes in the last 15 years, and we will continue to see changes. The next one is competition. At Atlassian, we like to keep an eye on the competition that we know about, but I guarantee whatever industry you're in, there'll be competitors that you don't know about. They are smaller and more nimble, and they are hungrier. They are probably more innovative. They see the business you've got, and they want to steal it. They want to take it away from you. So how do you understand your competition? Not so that you can copy them, but if you understand your customers and you understand your technology, how can you actually eclipse your competition? How can you do better than them? How can you delight your customers by giving them the best products and services every single day? And the last one is people. I often read articles that say in the world we are facing a war for talent. All right, there's not enough engineers, there's not enough designers, there's way too many product managers. And so this idea, there's no product managers here, are there? They left early. They've got fun parties to go to and talk about roadmaps. And so the idea here is, how do we go and hire the best people wherever they might be? For Atlassian, one of the things we had to accept a few years ago is the smartest people that we want to hire are not always where our offices are located. We have to hire smart people where they live in the world. And therefore, we need to utilize technology to enable us to collaborate and connect with them wherever they are. Also, as a company now, we have 11 locations across many time zones. So how do you keep those people connected? How do you keep that engagement? When I think about this and the war for talent and the fact that every software engineer probably gets 10 recruiters a week, calling them up, offering them new jobs, who's hiring the average people? If we all want to hire the smartest people, who out there is hiring the not smart people? Hopefully no one. But the idea here is, how do we get the most out of our people? How do we engage them and drive them? So what I want you to do with the person next to you, I want you to have a very quick conversation, 30 seconds each. And I want you to tell a very quick story to the person next to you. What is the hardest thing about working in teams? The thing that every day when you go into work, you're like, that thing, that's the hardest thing about working with other people. So with the person next to you, 30 seconds, very quick conversation. What's the hardest thing about working in a team? Go. Okay. Just bring it back. So you can carry on that conversation when I finish speaking and we all have beers afterwards. You can carry on that conversation with anyone in this room. You will find that the more you share stories with the people around you, the more you can learn. We actually did some research, and the reason we did the research on this is when you think about society, we tend to celebrate the success of individuals. So there you'll see Steve Jobs. If you go on LinkedIn today, Steve Jobs is still talked about, even though he's no longer with us. But he was also the first to admit that every success that Apple had was the Apple family. It was a family of people working together that generated the amazing products that keep Apple famous today. And yet we continually think about the individual. A recent study by Ernst & Young said that 90% of organizations, 90% are solving problems so complex, they have to be solved by teams. But the problem is, we did a survey, and we found that 78% of people said they did not trust their teammates. Now that kind of scares me a little bit, because trust is essential. It's an essential ingredient. If you're working in an organization that requires transformation or change, or an organization that has high competition or is threatened by new companies, then you need to trust each other so that you can drive change. So we said to these people, why don't you trust each other? What are the things that are stopping you? And they came back with two things. The first one was communication. Interestingly, it wasn't that there was not enough communication. Most people said too much communication. Too much. I got a instant message, and a text message, and an email, and a ping, and a phone call, and a Jira ticket, and a Confluence mention, and a da-da. And it's like, it's just noise. So many people that I don't actually get any work done. So too much communication. The other thing we found when we talked about communication was communication does not occur here. It occurs here. And when we talked to senior leaders, they were like, I don't understand. I told them. And we said, no, you can't just tell someone. You need to check, did they hear it? And did they understand it? That's what communication is. The second thing we found was accountability. The idea that I may have worked with someone like you before, and therefore when we start working together, I make an assumption about how you're going to work, and you assume how I'm going to work. But we never have that conversation, and we don't hold each other accountable. When we asked people about accountability, the number one word that came out was priorities. I have too many priorities. I have too many things to do. Or politely put, there's lots of shit. Just noise, lots of work, but like you don't feel like you're making any progress. So we did a tiny bit of research, and when I say tiny, I literally mean maybe 20 minutes, because at Atlassian, we don't like to spend too long dwelling on the past. We like to think about the future. We like to try and help companies change. But when we did some research, we made a discovery. On the left-hand side there, you'll see efficiency. Efficiency and bureaucracy were invented about 120 years ago. They're a legacy from the Industrial Revolution, when technology was first created, the very first times of automation. If you think about the workforce in the 1920s, it was very different than you, very different to the people in here. The workforce of the 1920s, a largely male, white workforce. They were not well educated, and they did work with their hands and not with their head. If I compare that to this room, we have a diverse room, a mixture of gender and races and religions. You are all highly educated, significantly more educated than that generation. And a lot of the work you do is thinking, creative, and curious work. Admittedly, that might come through your fingers on a keyboard, but you're not doing labor, high intense labor work. The problem is most organizations I speak to still look a lot like that business from 1920. Organizations where the best ideas come from the most senior people, which is not true. Organizations where they manage through control and fear, through hierarchy. You will spot these organizations if you're in one, because the communication goes up and down the chain of command. The other thing that happens in these organizations is you spend a very large amount of time writing reports, just hoping to keep your job. Not to advance the company or to do something different, but just to cover yourself. In these companies and these teams, what you find is you focus on very short-term outputs. And at the end of the week, someone will say to you, "How was your week?" And you'll say, "Oh, busy. Busy, busy." And they'll say, "Doing what?" "Busy, busy. Meetings, busy, just busy." And then you sit there and say to them, "Were you effective? Did you make progress?" And like, "Oh, busy, busy, busy." The more they do actions, the more you know they are lying. And the problem is, we get carried away with busy. We have this desire for instant gratification, the fear of missing out. We want everything to happen quickly. How many of you have a measure of success of shipping your product or service on time? Thankfully, no. Oh, one person, very honest gentleman. We found in Atlassian a lot of our teams were starting to measure shipping as their measure of success. And we're like, well, actually, we don't care whether you shipped on Friday or Thursday. What we care about is the impact you have on our customers. So therefore, how do we measure outcomes and not outputs? The problem with outcomes is they occur 3 or 6 months after you ship. So you have to watch and listen and learn. And if you're shipping code, the outcome is how that gets used. I don't care whether it went on a Thursday or a Friday. I care how it changes a customer's behavior and how much value a customer gets from that. And so at Atlassian, what we wanted to do was to be more effective. We were kind of effective when we were small, but as we were growing, we were worried we would not be effective, and we would end up building a large hierarchy. Teams that we could control and manage. And we didn't want to do that. We wanted small, autonomous, and nimble teams. And so what we decided to do was to think about, instead of having process that tells people what to do and measures compliance, I personally have never got out of bed and said, "I can't wait to be compliant today." How can we go from this idea of compliance into doing something more valuable? How can we make our work and understand the fact that our environment is complex and changes regularly? For anyone that likes statistics, if you think about effectiveness, you can just swap that word for relevance. So if you look at the Fortune 500, the US listing, if you look at the Fortune 500 from the year 2000, 50%, half the companies that were in the Fortune 500 in the year 2000 are no longer there. 100-year-old companies worth billions of dollars no longer exist. They were very efficient businesses, but they did not make the change as the world around them changed. They did not. So a quick example for you. Has anyone heard of Blockbuster Video? Okay. So in 1999, the year 1999, it was the year before I started work, Blockbuster Video in that year made $800 million from late fees. From customers borrowing a video and returning it a day or two late, Blockbusters made $800 million in that year. That same year, Blockbusters had the chance to buy Netflix for $50 million. 800 million, 50 million. And Blockbuster said, no one will ever get a DVD through the mail. No one, this technology thing of no one will watch movies through a wire. That will never happen. And we just made $800 million. Why would we buy Netflix? Blockbusters no longer exists. They had 13,000 stores that are now empty. And last quarter, Netflix hit over 100 million active users. In theory, the product is very similar, but it's not, because it's how the customer consumes the product actually matters more than the product that you ship. So when we thought about that last year, we decided to do a review, a reflection of what makes a great team. Now, as I mentioned before, there is lots of research on teams, but we wanted to kind of do this in a simple fashion. So the very first thing, if you ask an Atlassian, many smart engineers like there are in this room, what makes a great team? They're like, tools. As long as you've got software, everything else is easy. Does anyone else believe that to be true? No one brave enough to say yes. The second thing we identified was people. And what we decided and what we landed on was essentially there's two types of people in the world. The growth mindset and the fixed mindset. The growth mindset wants to develop and learn. It's curious. They're the people in your organization that say, why are we doing this? What's it for? How can we do this differently? Sometimes they might feel like a pain. They might slow you down. But actually, they're an investment. They're going to help you get somewhere really quickly. And then the last thing we looked at was practices. Now, this is interesting. When we talk about practices, we do not mean methodologies. We don't mean, are you agile or waterfall? What we mean is, how do you interact across teams, both within the team and across other teams, across geographies and time zones, between product manager, engineer, and designer, between the business and marketing, legal and finance. How do you interact? And what we found was many organizations, especially traditional organizations like a bank. Does anyone here work for a bank? Okay, awesome. So you may be able to empathize with this. Banks do really well at spending money on technology, and then they don't do quite as good a job in changing their culture of how to use that technology. So a friend of mine is a senior leader in a bank in Australia, and he said, Dom, every piece of collaboration software is rubbish. I've bought every single one, none of them work. And I went and looked around his office, and they have these cubicles, gray cubicles, about this high, and everyone's sat there, and no one talks to each other. And I said, it's not the software. And he said, do I need whiteboards? I'll buy whiteboards instead. And I was like, no, it's your people. They are petrified of speaking to anyone else. If your people and your culture doesn't say that sharing ideas are important, no software will change that. Human behavior and software need to work together. So I've translated this phrase, but for those of you who understand English, it's the reason that tools aren't the answer. Because a fool with a tool is still a fool. The problem is you've just made them faster. Think about that next time you deploy a solution. Have you taken an idiot and made them really fast? You've probably done it, like you're chuckling because you're like, I remember the last time I may have done that. And it's fine, but it's this focus we have on tooling. And yet when we give out tooling to people that don't understand the power of that tool, you may actually have made things worse, not better. So at Atlassian, what we decided to do was to say, how can we focus on engaging our people without technology? How can we have human-to-human conversations? So we landed on something that we called the Project Team Health Monitor. We did some very quick research. We looked at 3 Atlassian project teams that were really successful. We had the t-shirts printed, we had blogs about them, there were stories being told, people still have hangover from the party. They were the project teams that everyone remembered. And then we looked at 3 Atlassian projects where just saying the project name made people reverse and hide and want the ground to swallow them up. They were the projects that failed. They completely screwed up. But we looked at those because we wanted to learn from them. And we landed on 8 attributes, 8 features that we believe make for a healthy team. And what I did was I sat down with a team, I published a page with the definition of the 8 areas, and we had a conversation. And throughout that conversation, we realized that we were really good at some things and not so good at others. You can take pictures, but I'm going to give you a copy of this in a minute. So if you don't get it, because if you're taking a picture and that's not clear, you may get home tonight after a few beers and not remember a single thing I've said. So I'm going to give you a copy of that in a minute. Interestingly, this is where I completely failed. I was convinced that every single team was a project team. In my world, project teams have a start, middle, and an end. They are cross-functional in nature, and when they ship their product or service, they often disband and join another team. And there's so many project teams around Atlassian. In fact, of our 2,500 people, we're made up of 350 teams. So we had lots and lots of project teams, and I was convinced they were the only one. And then I realized that actually leadership teams and service teams exist, and they act differently than project teams. So whilst project teams start, middle, and an end, short sprints or short tasks and activities, and they ship an experience. Leadership teams are different. Leadership teams have to set a vision and direction, long-term vision and direction. Great leadership teams then need to inspire and coach and mentor the people around them to do the best work of their life. And then we realized that our leaders did a third thing that we didn't want them to do. And we coined a phrase, the seagull boss, the seagull manager. So this person has read all the material about autonomous teams and empowerment, and they've seen my presentation, and they think it's awesome. And then in the 3rd week of the month, the seagull boss wakes up in his or her bed and thinks, I'm nervous. What if my team isn't doing the right thing? So they fly into your team area, shit everywhere, and then fly out. They look a lot like a seagull. If you're not laughing, it might be you. And so the seagull boss isn't a bad person. They're not malicious. They have very good intent. The problem is they get nervous and they come and distract you. They probably call it disruption or innovation or some other phrase that just annoys you because they stop you doing the work you need to do. I actually saw an example in Atlassian, a team working together. The boss walks in and he goes, you went for a blue screen. Fascinating. And walked out and they're like, blue. No, we shouldn't do blue. Should we do green? Let's do green. Should we do green? No, let's do red. And for about a week, they had a long conversation. The data that they had curated, the data they'd collected, and every customer insight said blue. I do not care what that leader thinks. They are not the customer. And way too often in teams, you end up doing the thing that you think your leader wants, which is nothing to do with what you know the customer wants. And so what we said to our leaders was, in the nicest possible way, get out of the way. Set the vision and direction, be there as a coach and a mentor, and then leave your teams alone to do the thing you've hired them to do. The last team type was service teams. They look a lot like project teams. But what we realized was, instead of having a backlog, service teams have a queue. And so the first thing we need a service team to do is to triage and prioritize. What's the most important thing? What you'll find, service teams are HR operations, some of our DevOps teams, customer support, IT help desk are some examples of service teams. What we found was most service teams look like firefighters. They wait, they see a fire, they fly in, they put the fire out, they take the praise, and then they go home. The problem with firefighters is they often start fires. They do that to keep them in work. So what we actually said to our service teams is, how can you spend the right amount of time fireproofing and less time firefighting? How can you imagine the challenges your internal customers might have and solve them before they become a problem? Prevention is better than cure. So we landed on these attributes, and then we decided, how could we run this? How could we run this across 350 teams in 11 locations? So the first rule, everyone that takes part in these exercises is equal. There is no hierarchy, no boss in the room. Everyone has a view. And what we say to our people is, every single person sees the world through their own eyes, and we all see the world differently. That's a good thing. Embrace that. How can you understand what other people think? And what we do is we get our teams either using Post-it notes or thumbs to rate each of the 8 attributes. Thumb up is good. Thumb sideways, not so good. Thumb down, we have a problem. Let's discuss that. And we get everyone to do a rating. So we stand around as a group and do that. And then we discuss, we share. What did you see that made you vote down? And what did you see that made you go green? I have literally run thousands of these sessions, and I have never, ever, ever had a session where everyone agreed. We all see the world differently, and that is a good thing. Once we've discussed the ratings, we actually get the teams to focus on one area. I don't know about you in your organizations, but in Atlassian, when a team realizes they're struggling with 4 things, and I say just do one, they're like, no, we need to do all 4. We need to fix everything yesterday. But that's not real. You have work to do already. You probably weren't looking for extra work. So how can we focus on the area of impact? In actually running the first 50 sessions, the number 1 area our team struggled with was shared understanding. Shared understanding says, do you know why you are doing what you are doing? And do you trust each other to get there? What we found was, over time, our teams knew what they were building. I am building a feature. And then we'd say to them, why are you building that? And they'd say, I'm building a feature. It's a feature. And I'm like, no, I know it's a feature. Who are you building it for and why? And they were like, Friday, we are shipping on Friday. It is a feature. What is important? But if you don't know why you're doing that, you will never listen for information that enables you to course correct and change what you do. You will ship the idea you originally had regardless of whether it will be successful or not. And no one wants to do that. No one wants to deliver something that doesn't get used. So shared understanding was our number 1 area. What we realized was if all we did with our teams was put this mirror in front of them and get them to find areas where they were struggled, that our teams would be very sad. They'd be depressed. And we didn't want that. We want happy, engaged, and successful teams. So what we did was, as teams identified areas where they struggled, we watched them as they improved, as they drove the continual improvement. And so if you take shared understanding as an example, we landed on 3 plays. We call them plays. They are exercises that you do as a team. So if you're struggling with shared understanding, you can do a play called the elevator pitch. It's a workshop you do with your teammates where you say, you are trapped in a lift with your CEO and you're going to travel 10 floors. And the CEO says to you, what are you working on right now? Now you can panic, like I often do, talk about football, cry. There's many things you can do. But with the elevator pitch, we say, be prepared to answer that question to anyone in the organization. I am working on this project to solve this problem for these customers in this industry. Why are we doing what we're doing? The other one is the project poster. It's a living document. We actually created this in Confluence that says, what is the problem you are solving? What's the impact of that problem? And what is your proposed solution? I did this exercise last week with a team in Sydney, and I got them to write the problem, impact, and solution on a piece of paper. Everyone did it separately. And then after 5 minutes, we held up our answers. Most people had the same solution. Everyone was solving a different problem. One person thought the problem we were solving was saving money. The other person thought the problem we were solving was growing. They were going to spend the money this person was saving. The problem with that is you end up doing neither. It's not the best solution. It's not a hybrid. It's the worst solution. So we say to our people, have the conversation early and agree on what problem you're solving. Agree on the impact and agree on the solution. So from 400 to 500 people up to a few thousand people, we documented internally something that we've called the team playbook. It's how all of our teams across Atlassian in every location work together. Nothing to do with technology. And in that playbook, we had the 3 health monitors, so attributes for project teams, leadership teams, and service teams. And we actually documented 26 plays. Some of them smell and look and feel like agile. Some are like design thinking. Some are lean. Some are business model canvas. Instead of picking a religion or a single methodology, we've combined many different things. We've tried them, and then when we try them, we share them internally. We are not the best agile workplace in the world. We sell agile tools, and many of our teams work in an agile fashion. But we have not adopted it in a way where you could come in and say that Atlassian is very agile. What we are, though, is very effective. We will use lean when lean works. We'll use design thinking when that works. So the important thing is, how can you find a way of working that matches your environment, your teams, your industry? So in November last year, actually in October last year, I was chatting with our founders, Scott and Mike, and we were celebrating how the impact the team playbook had had on Atlassian. We've been running with this for 2 years. It helped us grow, stay small, stay autonomous. In Australia, for 2 years on the row, we won the best place to work in the whole of Australia. So we knew this was working for us. So we made a decision. We're not going to keep this a secret. We're going to share it. So in October last year, we published the Atlassian Team Playbook, free of charge for every team everywhere in the world to use. Not only did we publish the playbook as a website, but we decided that all the Confluence templates that we use when we run these workshops, we package those up as well. So if you're a Confluence customer, you get all this not only for free like everyone else, but you get all the templates as blueprints in Confluence Server and Confluence Cloud. This website is the same website every single team in Atlassian uses every single day. So we don't run one version for us and a different version for you. This is the exact same version that we use, all of our teams internally. Now that's quite good, but it's also quite bad. And the reason it's bad is I'm familiar with the fact that some of you are not native English speakers. And so our mission at Atlassian is to unleash the potential in all teams, not just English-speaking teams, because that would be a bit cruel. So what you'll find is a full Spanish translation of the team playbook. Not only the website, but on there you'll find the 3 health monitors for project teams, leadership teams, and service teams, and the 26 plays. If you happen to be working for an international company, it's also in Brazilian Portuguese, Japanese, German, Italian. We have translated it into many languages because we want you to find ways of working with your teams. So I encourage you to give it a try. There is no charge. We're never going to put a price on this because we believe that you can go and find new ways of working through trying this out. So this is what the health monitor looks like in Spanish. It makes no sense to me now because I speak very bad Spanish. Luckily, I've used the English version enough so I can guess at what it says. So people often ask me, I've done over 1,000 health monitors. About 900 of those are across teams at Atlassian. And in the last year, since we launched this, I've traveled around many Atlassian customers, And I've done 100 sessions with Atlassian customers, banks, insurance company, retail, financial services, startups, technology companies, health, companies of all shapes and sizes. And I regularly get asked, is Atlassian better? Have we improved because of this? It's actually really hard to measure. I can't stick a thermometer in any of my teams and measure their temperature. But what we've realized is we were starting to act a bit like a factory. It was old ideas. We were very structured. We were kind of stuck in the status quo of what worked last year or the year before. And so what we've now moved to is Atlassian looks a lot more like 350 small labs, experiments, exploration. We fail all the time. We make mistakes every single day. And when we do, we celebrate them and we blog and we tell the story so that other teams don't make the same mistake. Most organizations I speak to say, no, when we make a mistake, we brush it under the carpet and we hope it will never happen again. But it will, because if you've not shared that experience, it's very likely to happen again. Instead of being data-driven all the time, one of the things we talk about is being data-informed. I don't like the idea that data makes decisions. I hold people accountable for making decisions. So data-informed says, how do you take the data, turn that into insights, and use your knowledge, your experience, your head, your heart, your intuition? How do you combine all those things? Because you make decisions, not technology. And then how do we get feedback? How do we keep that loop of constantly asking how something worked, if it worked, and what we can do differently? When you do that, you realize that the old business world that many of us were taught about, that had input, process, and output, isn't the world we're living in today. The world we're living in today is very circular. Everything that I do, I am reliant on many people. I need a strong communication channel with those people. We need to set expectations and hold each other accountable. We need to get constant feedback. Oh, I clicked too far. So the whole business world is circular. Now, I'm not just here to share stories. I have 3 actions that I'd really like you to take. So I said at the start, dysfunction is the gap between what you know and what you apply. You are free to leave here today just knowing what I told you, and you don't have to try anything. But why would you do that? So my challenge to you, the first one, is unlearning. How can you think about ways that you have worked in the past that are no longer valuable for you, so that you can free yourself up and give yourself time to try something new? The method I use is called the 4 L's: loved, longed for, loathed, and learnt. I do it with myself and with my teams every single month and quarter. It just so happened this afternoon when I translated that to Spanish, it's the 4 A's, which is quite remarkable. I didn't realize it would translate so well. But just think, if you do the same thing that you did last year, and you do that next year, you will not be as successful. If you do the same thing every year, you are on a slow decline, while the world around you is going that way. You can't work any more hours. There's still only 24 hours in a day. So what I encourage you to do is, what are the things you can stop doing so that you can give yourself time to try something new? I encourage you to try the team playbook. I do not make any money from you trying the team playbook, but I guarantee every single team I've spoken to around the world in every industry has found value from assessing how they work. They don't need new tools and technology. They need to get their people talking to each other and actually collaborating. The second thing is understanding the environment you are working in. Virtually every business I talk to, whether it be their business or the customers they serve, is international and borderless. We are doing work with many different people in many different countries. Also, diversity and how you can tap in to people that think differently than you. The best ideas I have are the ones when I talk to someone, they say, Dom, that is a terrible idea. The sparring that I have with them, the conversation, the collaboration, enables that idea to be 100 times better than when I do it by myself. And the last one is understand that there will be constant change. I don't believe that teamwork or the way we work together is something we will ever solve. It's something that will evolve constantly. So how can you understand changing technology? How can you understand the many generations of the workforce? If you're a leader today, you have more generations to lead than any people before you. Millennials, Generation X, Generation Y, baby boomers. The millennials are digital natives. They have grown up with these things in their hands 24/7. They think and act very differently than baby boomers who have migrated to digital from an analog world. And I believe that business all over the world has a currency. For the last 100 years, that currency was doing everything consistently. I think the new currency of teamwork is creativity and curiosity. And your job as a leader is to create an environment where people are comfortable sharing, being vulnerable, being creative. So I want to end on a quote, one of my favorite authors of all time. And the reason I think this quote is important to you is many of you in the room right now are sat there thinking, who in my office should be doing this? It's you. If you wait for someone else to own team health or for someone else to take the action to drive continual improvement, then you are the problem. You should feel empowered because if you can invest a small amount of time and improve the team around you, that's a great thing to do. You will learn from doing it. So what I encourage you to think about is when you think about the future of work and the future of your business and your industry and your career, don't wait for it to happen to you. Don't be a passenger, be a driver. You are the ones that can drive the change and you can unlock and unleash your potential as a leader and the teams around you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Pasemos a las preguntas. Preguntas, levanten la mano, bien alto.
Everyone wants beer. They're like, where's the beer?
¿Alguien tiene preguntas?
There's one at the back.
Hey, Dom.
Hello.
Over here in the
Oh,
front
there you
row.
are. Hello.
Yeah, here. Well, my question is, so you have these health checks and this playbook. How do you evolve the playbook? Is like there is a team, there's a playbook team, or is it like a more, collective effort? And how do you coordinate that?
Good question. So how do we coordinate and is there a team? So the playbook team, you're looking at him, it's pretty lean. It's a lean team. It's me. And we've done that on purpose because we don't ever want the playbook team to create something that goes on the site. Everything you see on the site was created by our teams, by the people in Atlassian solving problems. What we do is we track metrics on the site. If a play is not regularly used, it's probably solving a problem that doesn't exist. So we remove it. As our teams come up against new problems, which happens every week, and they find new ways of working, we set them a challenge. Take that way of working and make it work in a completely different team to you. If you can make it work, it goes on the website. And so what you see on the team playbook today looks nothing like what we launched a year ago. And I promise you in 6 months' time, it will be completely different because the world is not static. It is changing every single day. There's a gentleman at the back.
Hi, Dom. Thank you for your presentation. My question is out of the box. What mean Atlassian? What mean Atlassian?
Yeah. So what's the...
What mean Atlassian?
Oh, the name Atlassian. So the name Atlassian came from Charles Atlas, holding up the world. Mike, one of our co-founders, studied Latin, and he looked at the idea of Charles Atlas holding up the world, and they were like, how can we build, software's eating the world, how can we build software that keeps the world up? And so that was the origins of Atlassian. Good question.
Hey, Tom.
Hello.
Thanks for a really inspiring talk. My question is regarding the business size and your advice, depending on like the size of the business or maybe the size of each team that you're advising.
Yeah, so I think team size is more important than the size of the business. I get quite frustrated by leaders who say, my business is now so many years old, so we have to grow up. Or my business is so many hundred people, so we have to grow up and mature and add more process. It's bullshit. It's them saying, as a leader, I am insecure and I need control. And that's never a good thing. Control doesn't win you any friends and it doesn't win you any customers. So the reason we keep to small teams is small teams are way more nimble. What we find is when teams get a certain size, probably over 10 or 12 people for us, they get very slow because there's an overhead in managing that team. And so what we rather have is small teams that are nimble and can change quickly.